I respectfully acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, the world's oldest educators and the traditional custodians of the land on which this podcast was recorded, Darkin Jung Country, surrounded by the beautiful Booty National Park, Brisbane Water and Putty Beach. The land we learn, teach, play and walk upon always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Teaching is one of the most rewarding vocations, yet great teachers are burning out and leaving the classroom in record numbers. Welcome to the PDHPE and CAFS Podcast with your host, Kel Bell. This podcast empowers busy New South Wales teachers of PDHPE, CAFS and HMS to teach with confidence, clarity and ease. I understand the challenges of teaching because I've lived them. With more than 2 decades in education, I've journeyed from classroom teacher to becoming New South Wales' trusted voice in PDHPE, community and family studies and health and movement science. Together with leading experts and teachers just like you, we're here to help you reclaim your afternoons, weekends and holidays through practical resources, supportive memberships and powerful professional learning. Ready to reclaim your time? Access your classroom-ready PDHPE, CAFS and HMS tools at thelearnnet.com/tools. So grab a cup of tea or coffee and let's chat about creating impact in your classroom without burning out in the process. Hello and a huge welcome back to the PDHP and CAFS podcast. Today we are joined by a special guest in Kate McGill, and Kate is joining us from Butterfly Foundation. Many of you would have heard and seen resources from Butterfly, and we are very lucky to have Kate here with us. A huge welcome to the podcast, Kate.
Thanks, Kel. It's great to be here.
Yeah, we were very lucky to have Kate at our K-10 PDHP forum a month ago. That month has just flown. We've been trying to tee this up for a little while, but Kate, can you give our listeners a little bit of an intro, who you are, what you do, and the work that you do with Butterfly?
Sure. Thanks, Kel. So my name's Kate McGill. I'm an accredited practising dietitian and body image coach, and I do lots of different things, but some of my favourite work is with the incredible Butterfly Foundation. In my Butterfly role, I do, again, lots of different things. I do sessional presenting as part of their prevention team, which is where we met, Kel. And I also am a dietitian in their virtual outpatient program called Next Steps.
So you have obviously like a vast experience with dietetics and nutrition. How did you kind of get involved in the work with Butterfly?
Yeah, so Kel, I guess my story is very personal. I had my own very rocky relationship with food and body as a young child and a teenager and a young adult, and sort of my own healing and recovery journey led me down lots of different garden paths, and one of those was towards the wonderful Butterfly Foundation. So, it's a personal and professional driver for me, especially with the conversation around body image, because I did really struggle with the way that I felt about my body, saw my body, the behaviours that I engaged in as a result of that. And so when the opportunity popped up for the Butterfly Foundation to come aboard, I couldn't say no.
And I think it kind of, a lot of the time in our careers and in our lives, there's always like a path leading back to like our core mission or we get to learn so much from our own experience and our own journey that we then get to impart and share with others based on what we've kind of uncovered along the rocky road or the smooth road or, the path along our journey. So, look, I think you're in a very unique position that you get to share that with lots of young people and, even in your work with teachers and presenting, like to share that passion.
Yeah.
I would love to, I suppose, start at the beginning with like young people because a lot of our audience are either primary teachers, teaching from kindergarten or prep all the way up to year 6.
Yeah.
And then the second part of our audience is high school PDHPE teachers who they're living, breathing, doing this work. A lot of them are in welfare and wellbeing, pastoral coordinators, year advisors, year coordinators. They're wearing a lot of hats. Let's go back to the young people. What can we do as educators to have positive conversations and even just that starting point around body image in primary schools?
Yeah, I love that, Kel. What can we do to really cultivate, ingrain that, different conversation around bodies and body image? And I think something important to remember that, body dissatisfaction is really, really common among, yes, our young people, more broadly though in society. And there's lots of different elements that we can explore today around that. But, being mindful of what are our own beliefs and values around particular bodies. How is our body image when we think about body image? Remembering it's much more complex than simply how we look. It's also how we think about bodies, how we feel about our body. Do we feel positive, negative, neutral, something else? And those behaviors that we engage in. So that might be eating as a behavior, different to nutrition, which is a science, physical activity, other health promoting behaviors as well might be included in our body image. So, yeah, I guess lots of different potentials. But one of the things I would really recommend people have a think about is, where do I sit in this? What are my kind of beliefs and value systems around it?
And then from that lens, we then go, okay, we need to put our educator hat on and cast that aside.
Mm,
I think a lot of teachers sometimes get caught up in either their journey or sharing stories from their life and then might sneakily, not intentionally, I don't think,
sure,
share what's happened to them. And I think teachers kind of need to go, we are the educator, not, it's not our, place to actually share our own personal journey.
sure, sure.
Most teachers are quite good at that, like that
Yeah.
three-step removed kind of, approach. If we have, like if we're teaching young, like, kindergarten kids, what's things that like, activities that we could do with our young kids, to start that conversation about our bodies?
Yeah, I love that so much. I got goosebumps when you said that. I think, and the age appropriate piece is really important here as well, because obviously the conversations are very different, primary and high school, but even, throughout those different age brackets or, primary and secondary, kind of how that fits in. So very, very early, wonderful things, primary or even earlier than primary school, talking with our young people and focusing in on, what our bodies do, the function of our bodies. I love to talk with young people about what's your favorite thing to do in the whole world. For some people, it's sport. For some people, it's reading. For some, it's, playing with animals, whatever it may be, and kind of bringing that back to that's all able to be done because of our bodies. So when we start putting the focus on what our bodies let us do, how they let us engage with the world and, all our favorite things, inadvertently takes off some of that kind of maybe appearance pressure or the diet culture pressures that everybody is sort of swimming amongst as well. So definitely thinking about function, what our bodies let us do, and a bit of body gratitude in there too. Thank you, body, for letting me do whatever it is that I love to do every day.
That's really nice, and I think, thinking about the new syllabus, because we have a new syllabus in South Wales in K-6
Yeah.
and 7 to 10, as you probably know, and they've finally, after all these years, started to bring in some of the, actual physiological,
Yeah.
this is what our body does, this is our heart and our lungs and the function of it, our brain, and having that common language from kindergarten all the way through to year 10 is, such a powerful thing for teachers to do, like to use. But also saying that, like, it's a function, like we've been made into this wonderful body. It has a function. And, we can talk about respect and gratitude for what this wonderful body can actually do. Like we're, very lucky to be born into the bodies that we are. So
Abs-
is it aside from the gratitude piece, what are some activities that you've kind of seen work with, like, the younger kids in primary schools?
Activities that work with young kids. I suppose I'm a little bit biased when you asked me that, Kel. We have a wonderful program called our Body Bright program. It's our primary school focused body image support program run by Butterfly Foundation. And yes, I'm biased, but it's a wonderful kind of program and guide. And I'm drawing from some activities that we use in that in our Body Bright. So things like we might watch a short clip of a video of, um, how a photo might be digitally edited and how that can, here's the kind of the starting point and this is how it ends up. And what's happening in there? What's the messages that we're being sent? So again, age appropriate's really, really important in here, but opening that conversation of, critical thinking about what we're seeing online, what we're absorbing as one example. Other things to think about. The broader conversations around health, Kel, what health might mean, because I think there's again, a diet culture definition of what health is. And then more broadly, health is really complex and individual. So I guess planting those seeds early, having those conversations, um, and then, yeah, the like, what is it that my body's letting me do every day? What is this vessel that I'm walking around in? What's it for? How it looks is one part of it. What else can I do? What else does it let me do every day?
Yeah, and do you think it's like it's educating kids about, having that self-awareness, that self-respect, but also then that, that it has a function and it can do many things. And the wonders, I think, that body bright, that idea sounds like it's such a great concept for, our young people, because I think, most people talk about health. Sometimes it then goes down that negative path, but,
Wow.
we teach it in PE that it's, there's 5, aspects of health.
Right.
It's not just about your physical body, it's about
Yes.
you spiritually and your cognitive, health. It's not just that physicality. Um
Absolutely. And even touching on elements in there like, appearance bullying is a big problem in Australia, around the world, in primary schools and secondary schools. And so, again, a bit of a focus and a light on, and Body Bright does this, being brave against appearance bullying. What can we do? How do we shut that down if we hear it? If we're receiving it, what can we do then? Maybe if we're handing it out, being, sort of some education around that too. So that mental health piece, so important. And we can absolutely do that in a primary setting in an age appropriate way that's so supportive for young people.
Yeah. And what about that kind of transition? I think a lot of look, a lot of young kids probably start out, in kindergarten, year 1, year 2. It's then when the body starts to change and we start to see those secondary sex characteristics in our wonderful body
Yeah.
that, like, do you guys in your work with Butterfly Foundation see that that's where it kind of starts at end of year 2, year 3 and 4 kind of stage, with maybe that it just
Yeah. Yeah, look, Kel, I'm devastated to actually share it's probably a lot younger than that for
wow.
most people. So we know our body image, remembering that complex definition of what body image is, really starts to develop as young as sort of, 2 and 3 years old. So when we start being aware and acknowledging that we have a body, sadly, we've seen some really devastating statistics around, you know, for example, around a third of our 6-year-old young men want more muscles. They want a more muscly body. And, there's so many elements that go into that. But, this is 6-year-old boys already saying, well, why don't I look like that superhero that I'm watching? Or why don't I look like that, sports person, whatever, whoever it is that we might be comparing ourselves to. So, yeah, sadly, it's happening younger and younger, and so these conversations, opening them up early, I think is vital for all different age groups.
Do you think, like, obviously we've got the media piece, we've got the family piece, we've got our young people's own self-perception and their own mental health.
Mm,
How do we, like, as teachers, how do you, like, deal with all those complexities and support, the 30
yeah.
different kids who are in your primary classroom?
Yeah, another great question, Kel. So, how do we support when there are so many moving parts? And it really is a puzzle. The body image conversation is a puzzle, and I want to, I suppose, just reiterate to all, your community here, Kel, that it's not all for teachers to carry. There are different roles, definitely. If we think about my role as a teacher in a school, in that educational setting, and yes, that is a more broad conversation about well-being as well. Am I opening up these different conversations with students? Am I thinking about that curriculum holistically? Am I, possibly planting some seeds about, again, age appropriately. This is why I highly recommend having a look at our resources online. But things like, teaching about diet culture, teaching about body image. It's not a teacher's role ever to fix, I'm doing in bunny ears, inverted commas, fix the problem here. But the way that we speak about bodies, the way we speak about health, can have a huge ripple across, how students engage with themselves and the world more broadly as well. And the other thing I just want to flag there, Kel, is that we know teachers have so many roles. There are so many hats that you wear. You're doing incredible work, under-resourced. There's a lot of factors. So I just want to put it out there that we know teachers are doing this with the best of intentions. But unfortunately, because of the culture that we're living in and all sorts of things, we can see how some of those really great intentions can, potentially cause some harm in some students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, I don't want to be negative, but
Mm.
could we just talk about those things?
Yeah.
And maybe
Yep.
that reframe might need to happen. Like,
Yep.
education is power. Like, teachers might not know that they might just be wording something or saying something that would
Yeah.
be, impacting the kids.
Yeah, absolutely, Kel. So language is, so important. I don't need to tell anyone here how important language is and the words that we're using. And so again, encouraging everyone to zoom out and think about, what does health mean to you? As a teacher, what does health mean to you? Because, if we have a very narrow definition of what that might mean, inadvertently we might be passing that on around sort of weight and shape and body size and those sort of things. Some of the problematic things that we are told about at Butterfly that I know, my own personal clients have navigated in the school setting around body image specifically. Things like weighing and measuring students in class. It is still happening. It is still happening. I know it's less and less common, thank heavens, but we do see it happening still. So, activities where we're getting students to weigh themselves to calculate BMI. BMI is really problematic for a lot of reasons, especially in young people. And then, sadly, I have heard more than once or twice that we then pin that up on the board and sort of compare students and their bodies. So activities that are pinning students up against each other in that regard, being really, really careful about doing anything like that. Language, around bodies and around weight. Some terms, Kel, including really commonly used terms like overweight and obese, come from the BMI, the body mass index, which we don't have time to go into why that's so problematic for most people right now, but it's a really outdated system. So if we're talking about, using language around overweight and obese, it can be really stigmatizing and problematic for people. Um, Other sort of issues with language are often around, morality around food specifically, which we might talk about a little bit more in our next podcast, but, specifically around being mindful of like what's healthy eating, unhealthy eating, what does that even mean? Good foods, bad foods, sometimes foods, everyday foods. There's a lot of language that we're using that can inadvertently do harm.
Mm. So what I'm hearing you say is that language is really important, and to just kind of, I suppose, be prepared, like just to really make sure that you under your belt are well equipped, and also you have the knowledge and the skills to then kind of approach that in an educative way. Because I think a lot of the times, as teachers, especially like even primary and PE teachers, the big one's always like sex ed, like we make sure, okay, am I saying this right? Am I not being controversial? Am I using the right language, the right terms? But I think with anything to do with health and well-being, we need to be very mindful about the perceptions and the language and the little nuances that we're kind of saying that we're not meaning it, but it could be harmful if, our kids are sponges. They listen, they can
Absolutely.
interpret things very, very differently.
Absolutely, Kelly. And I think that's where, no, we don't want to necessarily be sharing our own personal experience as a teacher. However, being aware of it and being aware of our own values and beliefs in that space can have a huge impact on how, like you say, inadvertently we might, make a off the hand comment about whatever it may be. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not perfect, like, people are
Of
not
course
perfect.
not. No.
It's just being mindful, like, "Okay, I just need to reframe that, just need
Yeah.
to educate myself and just make sure I'm being really intentional,
So,
with what I'm doing."
yeah. Yeah.
Let's go to, like, our high school kids,
Mm,
and we know that, there's baggage that comes from either a primary school setting in terms of the education, or it could be the lack of knowledge. We then have social media creeping into those, 4,
yeah.
5, 6s into year 7, wanting phones. Like,
Mhm.
it's an absolute minefield.
Yes.
Where do we even start with this with our, year 7 and 8 kids?
Yeah, it is so huge, isn't it, Kel? And, the social media changes that happened at the end of 2025, for I think some parents, it was a big sigh of relief and perhaps for some teachers as well. But we know in that space, social media is not going anywhere. Whether people are or are not accessing it now, they will be. And that can open up this sort of idea of, well, are we teaching those, again, critical thinking skills, media literacy skills? What am I seeing when I see this appearance content? What is it that it's selling me? Are we talking about or teaching about body image, what it is, what shapes it? That those sort of conversations that help students really reflect in on themselves and their own experience, because we know around 90% of our young Australians have some level of concern around their body. So almost all of your high school students, a 12 to 18 year group, are having some level of concern about their body. So this is impacting just about everyone.
And it's not just the girls, like, it's
Absolutely.
I think it's always been there, like, our males, our boys have always there's always been some element of,
Mm,
on the spectrum of body image and, disordered eating, but have you guys found, in your work, and obviously you've been working with Butterfly and in your own, profession, like, has that been something that has, skyrocketed because of social media or
yeah, yeah, great points. So we know, like you say, maybe body image concerns have historically been thought about as a, young teenage girl problem, and it's really much more complex than that. So young men are experiencing just as significant pressures to conform to particular bodies, body sizes, shapes. We know there's a lot of problematic, gym culture content, for example, online is one of those things. So, yes, boys and men are at just as high a risk for body dissatisfaction. And I suppose that the ideals are, of course, a little bit different as well. But we're learning more and more about boys and men, and a significant proportion of people experiencing eating disorders are men. So we know that, this is impacting people of all genders,
Mm.
definitely.
It's like, a lot of things, it doesn't discriminate just because you're a male or female living rural, remotely, in the city, on the beaches.
True.
It's happening everywhere.
It's happening everywhere.
Yeah, and I think as educators, we have to be equipped with the skills and the knowledge to be able to support, how to have that conversation with our students about their bodies,
Yeah,
about body image,
yeah,
about, body dissatisfaction, and it's not just one thing.
mm, yeah,
It's quite complex. It
so
involves mental health
complex.
as well, so it
Mhm.
involves nutrition, so it's multifaceted.
It's multifaceted, Cal. And really commonly with body image concerns, it plays out as there's problems with my body, but actually deep down we know it's, there's a lot more that drives it. My sense of self-worth, who I am, do I fit in here? How am I being viewed or judged by, the people around me? So again, that more holistic kind of understanding of what body image is and and how it evolves, even knowing that young people, young men, young women, and all other genders, can be a huge game changer because, certainly if I think back to my own schooling, there was no discussion around this. Body image was still a huge concern, as it, continues to be, but that we didn't have these conversations or understanding at that stage.
Yeah, and I think, the Catholic system talks about the whole child, but I think it's also like it's our obligation as teachers, no matter what school we're teaching in, we're teaching the whole child because we are very complex, creatures in this wonderful body that we have, but it is
Yeah,
very complex.
yeah, for sure.
So what do if like if teachers are looking for some ideas of
Mm.
things that they can do with their students, where would
Mm.
you kind of start? Like
Yeah. So where I would start on that would be to point your audience towards our body kind schools. So at Butterfly, we have a huge amount of wonderful resources for teachers, both paid and free resources online as well. And so our Body Kind Schools program is a mixture of all sorts of different things. There's curriculum-based learning activities, there's conversation starters, there's resources for parents, for students. If we are concerned about a particular student that might be experiencing, food and body concerns that we know about, because it is happening in your school, whether we know about it or not, what to do, how do we navigate this? So it's called Body Kind Schools, and I'll definitely get that link across to you, Kel. The other thing that I'd love to point towards teachers towards is our Body Kind August. So every year, Butterfly run a bit of an advocacy campaign towards the end of the year, and Body Kind August is a free uh, just need to take my breath for a second. It's a free program with, again, lots of learning resources, activities, videos, conversation starters. How do we get this conversation going in our school? So definitely check that out.
nice. And that's obviously a great way for, schools if they're not really doing it intentionally, like it's part of the curriculum, but I think sometimes we focus on all the, like, the big ticket items, like the alcohol, the drugs, the vaping, the sex ed, but then forget, like, this really underpins everything that we teach.
It
Even, like,
really does.
even our PE, like,
Yeah.
how do we kind of incorporate, body positivity
Yeah.
or, respect and, all that kind of stuff in our practical PE
Absolutely.
lessons?
Absolutely, Kel, that's such a great point. We know that, body dissatisfaction can be and is really commonly a driver for all of those, behaviors that you kind of mentioned. Like we know that there's, a high risk of drug and alcohol taking, other risky behaviors, changes in intimate relationships as young people, are growing and developing. All sorts of things absolutely can be underpinned by again this how we relate to ourselves, how we see ourselves in the world, our understanding. So absolutely I echo that there's it's sort of the foundation almost for the larger conversation around health. Why am I worthy of looking after myself? Because the culture that we live in, there's that pressure, to control and conform and change. And our call to action at Butterfly is, can we be a bit kinder in the way that we nurture ourselves, we nourish ourselves, and we move our bodies? Because, there are things that we can do to take really great care of ourselves and our body image. But unfortunately, those messages can get really diluted by this larger kind of diet culture conversation.
Yeah. Look, really important conversations for schools to have at, all levels. And I think to have that conversation multiple times a year, not
Absolutely.
just like in year 8, we're doing, body image. It has to be all the way through, from kindergarten, even, through to year 11 and 12 when it's not so much the focus. But if we have programs that we can offer our kids for our year 11 and 12s, like that's super important as well. Just because it's not in the curriculum doesn't mean we actually, we don't touch it at all with our seniors. So
That's
if
right.
teachers want to access any of the resources that you mentioned, we're going to pop them under the show links, but where's kind of the best way to first reach out? Is it to go to the Butterfly Foundation website?
Yeah, check out the Butterfly Foundation website, butterfly.org.au, and you'll see a range of different resources there for schools, for professionals, and the Body Kind August, Body Kind schools, and the Body Bright schools. You can get in contact with our education team if you're interested in some professional development for your teachers at school, or student sessions or parent sessions as well. We do lots of great facilitated sessions. Feel free to hop online and get in contact with us if you'd like some more support.
It's beautiful. I have one last question that I always ask all of our guests.
Yeah.
If you were to give your younger self, your younger Kate, some advice, what would it be?
I always get a bit emotional with this question when we're talking, especially about body image, because it was so sticky for me, Kel. If I was to give my younger Kate a bit of advice, and to be honest, I do talk to younger Kate because that little part of me is still in there, I would remind her that there was never anything wrong with your body, that the way you looked, the way it behaved, no, it didn't necessarily look like your peers all the time, and that's exactly what it was supposed to be doing, being uniquely and beautifully you, and that you are never broken. That would
Beautiful message to give to her. What a gift. Thank you so much for your passion and your wisdom. We are very lucky to have people like yourselves working in partnership, I say, with so many schools in New South Wales, and the good work that you guys do at Butterfly Foundation is changing so many lives. So thank you.
Thanks, Kel. Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
Kate. Pleasure. This episode was brought to you by the K-6 primary and 7 to 10 PDHPE memberships, the CAFS Collective, and the Health and Movement Science membership. Our community is designed to support and empower busy teachers like you. Explore them along with a suite of helpful teaching tools at thelearnnet.com. If you've loved today's episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share with a colleague, take a screenshot, and tag me on Instagram at kellybell.coach. I love seeing what resonates with you. Make sure you subscribe to Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay connected. And if you took even one thing away from today's chat, I'd be so grateful if you could please leave us a review. See you next week. Here's to finally reclaiming your time as a busy New South Wales teacher.